Welcome everybody to the Chapter 63 edition of A Cast on Titan. This episode of the podcast is going to be a landmark episode, as I'm sure you're already aware. For this month's chapter, let me go ahead and put the disclaimer out early that this is a manga spoilers podcast, which means that we're only going to be talking about things that happened in the latest chapter of the manga, so if you are not up to date, you should probably go away. So, to start off with, let's go ahead and introduce everybody who's here tonight, because like last month, the lineup is a little bit different tonight, and we also have a guest. So, I will go second. Scotty, if you want to go first, and we'll have our guest introduce third.
Alright, hey everyone, I'm Scotty, also ScottyV23 from the subreddit.
I am Stiller3 from the subreddit, and I'm one of the mods, and I'm not very happy tonight.
Hi, I'm Mika. You might know me as Mika6000 on the sub. I'm also Fukushu on Tumblr, and I do my best to translate all the new chapters as soon as the Chinese RAWs come out each month.
We're super excited to have Mika on as a guest this month, because this, like I already said, this is a landmark episode, and it's great to have Mika here to help us get through this as best as possible, because this is going to be painful. Okay, so, moving on from that, now we can go ahead and talk about our impressions of this chapter. We can do the same order for impressions. Scott, if you want to go first.
Alright, I absolutely loved it. No. Actually,
I was going to be mad at you if you hadn't said that.
I know, that's why I said I'm trying to get your angst ready, prepared.
I need the warm-up, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I had mixed feelings about it. I'm not going to say, on a scale of 1 to Stiller, I'm not at a Stiller, but I'm rather close. I feel like not for the exact same reasons. The mind wipe theory portion of it, I did get perturbed about that, but it wasn't like the end-all be-all, like, oh my god, type of moment. It depends where they take it. There were a lot of confusing moments where I feel like they dumbed down some characters and they just glossed over like glaring errors and like what the characters should have done in certain situations that would have made sense, but they just didn't do it for whatever reason. And they took not a lot of liberties, but they went in a lot of directions that I wasn't sure are going to pan out. So I mean we'll see in time if they do or not, but as of now I'm very skeptical.
So just real quick to add to your impression, the other big point of this chapter that we'll talk about is the Mikasa Ackerman thing. Give me like a quick brief impression of that.
Confused, but also could easily be a plot device that excuses a lot of Isayama's negligence of character development, which I really do not like. So yeah.
Very interesting. My impressions of this chapter should be pretty obvious, I think. I did not like practically anything in this chapter. There were a lot of things in this chapter that I despised very greatly. I think it's very easy for me to rank this chapter among one of the worst in the entire show, let's say. Whether it's the absolute worst, I don't know. That would be another discussion to have. But I really did not like this chapter, and aside from the obvious issues that I took with this chapter, I also don't feel like it was very progressive. Like, it laid some groundwork, but it didn't give us a whole lot of, great material to move from. I think what we focus on will probably be the big things to take away from this chapter.
For me, I agree with Scotty in terms of there were a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but several moments where it was just somewhat bizarre. I don't think I even have to name which ones those are for the specific characters. I think a lot of the motivations we may have presumed were not exactly, exactly how we picture them. And although I have to say that some revelations in here I personally have expected. for a long time. Maybe because those are characters I personally psychoanalyze a lot and personally enjoy a lot. But things like maybe there's a super Ackerman gene of some sort, or at that whole aspect, that whole theory was it was very familiar to me, actually, so I wasn't even surprised when it came up. But basically, this whole chapter I thought like you said too, Stiller laid groundwork, but it was more exposition. It was more just setting up, and it makes sense because this would be a chapter that's second in the volume, so we still have 2 more to go, and for the ultimate cliffhanger, I guess. And this is kind of the preparation of it all with Erwin going off to serve as support with the face-off, the confrontation coming, and whatever Aaron's gonna do, we'll see. But yeah, it's not the most exciting, even though there was a lot going on.
I can't imagine what the next 2 chapters are going to look like if this is only halfway through the volume.
Yep.
Interesting.
Is it, can we, from my perspective, can we go any lower from here? I'm not sure we can.
I think so. Because I feel like, Stiller, for you, there's very little that can be done to redeem where it currently is, but I personally think that they can redeem a great deal of what they've dished out in this chapter.
Man, I don't know, because it feels like there's a one of 2 different ways that this can go from here on out, because this chapter opened the floodgates. This is the chapter where the shark has fully eclipsed the moon, and anything goes from here on out, because you can't, at this point, do anything that will be any more extreme than what happened in this chapter. This is a precedent for basically any theory crafting you can come up with that outlies some sort of crazy shenanigans that would normally never seem possible. This chapter makes it possible. Anything goes. At the same time, the worst possible direction we could go could happen, but you could look at it from another perspective and say, well, maybe it's not that bad, because we've already gotten to the worst bit of it. Like ripping off the Band-Aid already,
You've reached the top of the hill with this chapter. It's all downhill, but in not a negative way. In the sense that it's easier going down. Like, this was the hardest part, the brunt of the series.
Definitely a turning point in a lot of ways.
It was, and that makes it difficult to continue on, because this chapter gave an ultimatum to a lot of people like me, where they introduce this and they say, alright, well, this is going to be a thing now, so if you're not cool with this, you might as well go ahead and get off the ship. Otherwise, you're in it for the long haul, and there's practically no use complaining about it now, since we already marked this. I have to be here, damn it.
Still want to see where the end of the tunnel is.
I can't not. I mean, I can't just not follow it,
And honestly, Stiller, I do think, like, they introduced it, and they haven't explained the mindwipe theory. It's not a theory, the mindwipe power at this point at all. So, I mean, what I was surprised with was how when Frida and Grisha fought, she didn't use the power. And there was discrepancy whether or not when Rod was talking about it, whether he was referring to Frida's ability to be a combatant in a Titan form, or her ability to use the mindwipe, but she didn't use it at all in the fight. So I don't think it's going to be as OP, or oh, I can just immediately erase your entire memory in Titan form, which would make him unstoppable, or whoever had the Titan power to mindwipe. And also, we still don't know how it's distributed, although we saw that she did do that to Historia with a touch on the forehead. But, I mean, there's still so much to discover with this power that, I mean, although it is appropriate to get annoyed and upset by the fact it was introduced, I would say hold your imminent frustration for when it's fully realized.
I've been hearing that a lot lately. That's been a constant, just non-stop. Just wait. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
No,
just
but I'm
wait.
not saying just wait, it'll be fine.
They'll fix it. It'll be okay.
No.
Come
just
down off the ledge.
What I'm saying is just wait and gauge your frustration level for what it will inevitably become. Like, don't be full on, like, I'm 100% upset at this. Because maybe you might be 40% upset after they fully describe it.
I don't think numbers are going to help the scenario.
Yeah.
Because the problem with this is that potentially the damage has already been done, like you say, and it's a continuation of asking me to hold out, to just keep holding on, to just not throw it out just yet. Just keep holding on, because for the longest time I fought about Mikasa's character. I fought about her character development forever. And typically, at the end of any of the discussions I've had about her, it's always been, well, eventually they'll fix it. Eventually we'll come back around. Eventually there will be something to redeem this. And this is basically taking the same approach, saying, well, we don't know enough about it yet. Let's just hold our horses and see what this is going to end up being.
With the Mikasa aspect, I feel like it's completely justified to be outraged. I am, because, like you said, you were holding out hope, like, just maybe they'll explain and develop her character some more and give insight into what was going through her mind in certain events. But this, with the Ackerman gene is pretty much like a warrior gene. It's
a dangerous word, Scotty.
What?
Warrior.
You know what I mean. Oh, yeah, Reiner. Gonna trigger him. But, I feel like it was a band-aid over, like, when I'm gonna describe or explain why they're powerful, we're just gonna say, oh, it's because they're Ackermans. It's like, that's an explanation, but it's such a weak one that anybody could come up with that. I feel like Isayama was probably like, oh, how do I describe, Mikasa and Levi's, power? It's like, oh, let's make Levi an Ackerman, then all Ackermans are awesome. They're perfect.
You know what, though? It's not that anybody can come up with that, it's that anybody has come up with that. This is a cliche they've introduced to band-aid this, as you say. And I think, overall, the big arguments that I've had over what this development means, I think the way to nutshell it is to say that these two different issues, which are similar in a lot of ways, are what I consider to be a tone shift and a change of consistency. Like, this is, what I've been arguing for is that this is a consistency issue and that this is a tone issue, and you can make the same argument to say that because this is a tone issue, that's one problem, but on the other hand, we've also band-aided these issues with cliches now on top of that.
Exactly, yeah.
So trying to explain these issues away with saying, just wait and give it time, like I've said about Mikasa in the past, okay, well, if they do fix it, that does not help me right now. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
If I can't find a way to, get around this right now other than to just basically turn my head and not look at it, then I have issues. I think Alni on the subreddit has been saying, just keep an open mind about it. Just, try and temper your rage a little bit. Just try and stick in there and hold on, and maybe it'll eventually be fine. Let's just say I'm not much of a believer in the potential.
Yeah.
It is, it was kind of a, I guess even though I said I wasn't surprised by it, you know, Stoller, you know how much I love Mikasa myself.
I was halfway expecting you to jump in at some point during that.
I know, I just wanted to let you guys get it out first. For me, I think, even though I expected it, like I'm with you guys in terms of not being completely pleased with it, because especially in terms of Mikasa, because they're my favorite characters, you almost wanted them to have this innate ability to triumph over the rest, to triumph over their challenges. And now, for me, it was about, so in the end, it just was a physical thing. It was something natural. It wasn't something that they overcame. So
it wasn't character building.
Yeah, it was a character flaw that that unfortunately was, I guess, exploited now. Although, you know, is this part of their personality in the first place? I don't know. Or is it physical and mental, you know? But for me, I think, you know, especially upsetting in terms of Mikasa, because she was such a strong female character in this series, you know, amongst many others. And for me, I just wanted her to be who she was. And, you know, this was her, and purely her motivation, purely her drive, and not something that was instilled in her or, you know, injected into her, God forbid. But you know, I'm still being patient and waiting to see what exactly the backstory is. I'm, you know, like you said, the confidence is not completely there because she talks about her father and how they've been persecuted for generations, and that's usually a sign that, you know, it's actually been going on for a while, and it's not something that only occurred in their generation in pennies. So we'll see where exactly they take it, how it incorporates into the history of the whole story, and hopefully it'll be better for you than you expect.
I can relate super well to what you're talking about with Mika's character being sort of what I call character breaking, by saying it's not character development, it's I don't know, character entitlement, something like that, where I'm afraid now, terrified of this chapter, because I don't want the thing that happened to Mikasa to happen to Annie. Oh my god, don't even do that.
Your beloved Annie, yes. When is she coming back?
Well,
I actually thought she was coming back this arc, but right now it doesn't seem like it. Unless she's actually close to that whole not basement, that whole what even is it? That whole structure, the cabin.
She's cooking in the kitchen.
It's basically,
exactly.
No, she's not.
I was very
she's a guest.
I was actually quite confident that Annie was coming back. I even told this to a lot of Tumblr users who asked me. I was like, oh yeah, she's definitely coming back. But now, like, they've you know, shifted the storyline a whole other way, and, you know, her appearance would be completely random if it happened now. So
that reminds me, actually, where I was going with that. I relate to that because I don't want that to happen to Annie.
Yeah.
Something I talked about on the subreddit was somebody who asked me about that specifically. If that does happen to Annie, I will not... I don't know how to say this correctly. I will not stand by Annie's character if this ends up being a thing. If they build Annie similar to Mikasa, where they destroy her character development, let's say, they make her too one-dimensional, and they make her character entitled, let's say, with some sort of extra unique ability beyond her ability to shift. If they take it that route, where they start removing aspects of her character that I found to be interesting character details, I very potentially easily could throw aside her as my favorite character. That's possible.
Oof.
It's very possible.
I feel like there's evidence.
Ultimatum has been made.
Yeah, I feel like there's evidence to support the fact that isn't true, because I remember, wasn't there a couple panels stating that Annie's father trained her?
That's true, but there's only so much pre-and context you can give before you give somebody a Frida X power. Where you say, oh, well, she's got, you know, the invincible power now.
Apparently not too invincible when you go up against Grisha.
We'll talk about that. We'll get into that a little bit later. So, there was a small pause just there. We have added an extra cast member to the rest of this podcast. Somebody who's been clawing and dying to get to this podcast with much great anticipation. We are adding Dumbledore, the regular co-host, to this podcast.
Well, that's a name you never, ever, ever use.
I'm looking at your name right now as the only reason
Zach?
I said it like that.
You forgot his actual name?
Yeah. If I wasn't staring at that name, I would not have said it like that.
Dumbledore rises from the dead. That's what it is.
That's pretty much what it is.
Yep.
So, Zach, just to get you caught up, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us your impressions on the chapter?
I'm Zach. I'm Darth Mewtwo, moderator of the subreddit. I do stuff, including apparently having my internet die 5 minutes before it's time to record. I thought that unlike a lot of the people in the sub, I thought it was a really good chapter. People were complaining, oh, we didn't get much plot development. Well,
Wow. What a horrible...
that's a load of bullshit.
I can't wait until you listen to the first couple minutes of the podcast.
That is such a horrible complaint. Who wants plot development? What
But-
needy people?
For one, we got 2 new Titan forms, who are sadly both dead, but also, I get to rub it in Stiller's fat face that I was right.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you had that theory in your head as well?
Oh yes, I was
Yes, but
I was one of the main proponents for mindwipes.
Mm-hmm.
And
What's a good analogy for that? That's like winning. It's like winning a competition at being the worst. You know what
excuse me, someone's a sore loser.
I mean, if you want to feel good about winning, considering what a terrible thing this means for the show now, by all means, go ahead.
I don't understand that argument.
Now, you will as time goes on. So, let's move into talking about Frida a little bit. I think Frida's a good direction to take this.
You mean Frida?
Or Frida.
Frida, whatever.
Yeah, it's Frida, I believe, in the katakana and in the Chinese.
Okay.
Frida.
Also, it's a German name, so...
Yeah.
So, the notes that I have on this one are akin to what I've said in past podcasts, is that now that Geographia has been officially introduced as a character that we can have some details about, I don't like that the trend has continued that we've introduced another character who's important because they're related to somebody, and who's important because they have really important powers that make them super important now. This is a continuing trend.
I have a feeling you're really going to hate that story-shifting character that's supposed to be introduced in the next couple chapters then.
I probably will, because one of my other biggest complaints about this chapter was that the entire story has shifted a little bit shifted now to being about Frida's power. This character who was only really introduced and really only given any details to in the last chapter or two.
Well, her power is just the coordinate, so...
Her power is the super invincible Omega Titan power.
Which I believe is the coordinate.
It's mindwipe, isn't it?
I think the coordinate and the mindwipe...
Both of those.
I think the coordinate and the mindwipe are the same thing.
That's a pretty super OP power. As Stiller said.
Well,
That's
you can't even not say it's OP, because it was described as being the invincible, holy shit, goddamn Omega Titan power.
Word for word identical. I read it.
You can't get around that.
I mean...
The fact that exists on its own is what?
I just don't like the fact that they introduced an important character that's dead. Like, again. It's as if, can we please just have characters that are meaningful, that actually progress the plot, that are alive?
Name one other important character that's dead.
One other important character that's dead?
That was introduced that's dead, yeah.
Clearly not Marco, because Marco was horrible. He wasn't important at all.
Well, he was alive when we met him, so...
Worthless Marco.
Yeah, he's horrible.
And any other examples, or...?
Of characters that were important that died?
No. Dead characters that were introduced as important.
Grisha?
Well, we met him beforehand, and we already knew he was important.
We met him for, like, a day, and then he's dead.
Well, we knew Frida for even less time, so I think that's
We knew Annie for even less time.
She's not dead, though.
Yeah, but she's
basically dead.
She's akin to dead at this point.
She's not. I don't agree with that at all.
Don't say that in Stiller's presence.
As in, she's not in the story.
We already talked about how she's going to be coming back, so we can't really float this argument.
Well, there's 2 examples for you, Zach.
I don't buy it.
Okay. So, what about that decision that Historia said? One of the issues I took, this wasn't a complaint about the chapter, this was kind of weird, was where they talked about how Historia's childhood had been erased by Frida. That kind of pissed me off, not because I didn't like that being in the chapter, but because that's kind of a dick move.
We don't know the reasoning behind it.
How so?
What gives Frida the right to take someone's childhood away like that? That's the problem with that
I see.
power. How would you feel, though, if you had, the most amazing childhood ever, even though that's not true in her case? But if you had a childhood that you would want to remember things fondly from, and someone just took it away from you without you ever actually knowing about it, I think that's bullshit. And
that makes me think that there's a reason, that there's something Historia knows or knew,
and
that...
I think that's totally fine. If she took that memory away for a reason, cool.
Well, there is.
And I think Rod is using the fact that Historia doesn't remember to manipulate her right now.
Absolutely. He's about to turn her into a friggin'
As soon as she
titan.
remembers.
The point I was getting at was I think that Frida is a shitty character as a person because she decided to do this basically without getting Historia's consent over this. Whether it was important for her safety or not, I don't care.
Right.
You don't get to essentially play God with this. Who are you to decide that? I think that's ridiculous. I think
in that same token, Grisha's a pretty big dick as well. He killed an entire family because he wanted.
Alright, Scotty, don't even start to go there. If you look at it, he was begging them. He was practically on his knees crying before he hulked out.
Alright, so it makes it okay to murder an entire family if you pray really hard for them to let you eat their child. And if they say no, then it's okay to just kill them.
It's the desperation of trying to save the
most common theory I've seen is that he's begging them to use the coordinate to seal Walmaria and save Shiganshina. And if they're going to say, no, fuck you, well, then he's going to get pissed and take matters into his own hands.
If you're following that logic, there's no reason he has to kill his entire family. Her entire family.
Well, for one, all we know about this is that it's coming from Rod's perspective. Right. And we already know he's a lying asshole, so...
Yeah. Okay, of course, if what Rod's saying is false, then everything I'm saying about Grisha being a dick is also false. That goes without saying. I'm going on the theory that this story is true, and if so, Grisha is a dick for killing the family.
It also doesn't make it very clear how much control Grisha has over his Titan form. It's similar, even if he has been that for decades, unlike Eren, but even Eren right now still has trouble. So I'm not sure if his intentions were, mixed in with his desperation.
He might have gotten
the trigger of something else. Just like playing devil's advocate for him. I also don't think it was the right thing to do, especially with so many kids involved. Rod is not a reliable narrator here, and in a lot of different elements.
I want to add on top of the Rod is a scumbag pile by going back to talking about Historia's childhood being right. Rod was talking about this super nonchalant, like he didn't really care at all. Like this wasn't a big deal, like he didn't even really give it a second thought.
Give what?
Historia's childhood being erased by Frida.
Oh.
Like he just didn't care.
Yeah. All he wanted was to inject her.
Yeah, he doesn't care about Historia. She's not his real daughter.
What a fucking scumbag.
Yeah, a lot of scumbags.
One of my other notes.
So much for the theory that not everybody is purely good or evil in this.
My other quote.
I'm still assuming that it's true that he's manipulating, which is probably 99.9% true.
I've got this stupid quote I wrote in here in my notes. It says, Rod is a goddamn liar, piece of shit, man.
That's a good note, Star. I'm glad you wrote that down.
That would contribute a lot to the discussion, I'm sure.
It did. Hell of a lot. Speaking of scumbags, you know who's not a scumbag? Zackly. He's a pretty cool guy, isn't he? Like to have dinner with that guy.
That'll be a pretty shitty dinner, pardon my pun.
Yeah, literally.
If I didn't know you were being sarcastic, I would almost believe you. That was pretty convincing. Good job.
Thank you.
Because you can't seriously be holding that stance. Zackly's not like some crazy fucking maniac guy.
I'm disappointed in the way, I said this in the forums too, that they made him so black and white, like evil. Like, oh, there's no even thought behind it. You don't have to discern that thought process on your own. We're just gonna spell it out for you. Oh, look, he's hanging one of the elite nobles upside down, chugging his ass. It's like, that's cool. Like, clearly he's the most evil, person who's manipulative and just desperate to get revenge. It's
he's not Annie here. You can tone it down a bit.
He says he's been waiting for decades.
Yeah, he has been.
But it is very interesting that 2 chapters ago, we all thought he was so honorable, being put appearing and kind of giving an ultimatum and standing on the right side, quote unquote. And then 1 chapter ago, you saw him kind of deviate to this
crack a bit.
Yeah, this crack. And suddenly it's just full on, what is it, clockwork?
Eat shit and die.
Yeah.
Well, the last chapter was the chapter I thought Zackly was finally starting to get a little bit interesting. I think Scotty was the same with that last chapter. But after this chapter, after seeing what he did in this chapter, I just do not give a goddamn about him anymore.
And that's exactly, Stiller hit it on the head, because last chapter, I was like happy and impressed with where the development of Zackly was headed, because it was like, oh, now he's a mixed character. He's becoming one of the more gray area characters that we've seen, and then it's like, take him completely out of gray and totally into black in like one chapter. It's
Or
like
brown.
Yeah, okay.
I actually wrote in my notes that he's worthless now. I really do not care about him anymore.
It's so true.
He might as well be.
I have a feeling he's gonna perish soon too, because his life goal has been met, and this is almost the Isayama's hint that you can start to hate him because he's gonna be out of the picture pretty soon.
Start?
No.
Some
people thought it
hint.
heavily.
Are we supposed to sympathize with him here or something? It's.
Well,
what if he had a really bad childhood?
It's a lot harsher than a hint.
I mean, if you sided with the guy in the Human Centipede, you might be on his side here.
Right.
He had some good ideas, so.
Science, right?
Yeah, science is
Everything in the name
pretty.
of science. It's okay.
Yeah.
Science. It's fine.
Sometimes science is rough, You gotta do what you gotta do. Break a couple eggs to make an omelet.
I mean, Zackly made Flagel look good in this chapter.
It was awesome. Come on.
Yeah.
How would Flagel not look good? What's wrong with Flagel?
He's not.
I know.
I don't know. I just don't like these kind of characters because I think they're worthless. These are kitchen characters to me.
Well, Zackly's cooking something up.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't like creepy old man Zackly being in the kitchen with all these dead kids now, too. It's kind of weird.
So, Squad 104 is pretty much there on the grounds, on the farms, and they're gonna eventually enter into the church, and then I guess Erwin is leading the charge with the rest of the platoon to help out.
Last we saw, they were at the farm, not the church.
Yeah, but the farm, the church is...
I guess, same state.
Uh-huh.
But Erwin's definitely headed to the chapel church. He said in his dialogue. So.
Well, they're all headed there. It's just where they are.
So let's talk about Erwin and Pixis a little bit. The notes that I had on Pixis and Erwin weren't a lot, but I do think Pixis and Erwin have moved up in my list of characters for being two guys who are fighting against mindwipes in the story. I'm happy about that. Those guys moved up on my list.
They're not fighting against it. They've completely accepted it.
Well, what I read from this chapter was Erwin and Pixis trying to find ways to not be affected by the mindwipes at this point. And that's good enough for me coming from them. As long as somebody's fighting to have people not affected by mindwipes, I'm on board with that person.
They just don't want to have their own minds wiped. They don't really care about the whole populace. I mean, I would not put it past Erwin to use the mind wipes to his advantage.
So let me rephrase it then. For right now, I'm super happy with Erwin. If that ends up being the case, I'm not going to be happy with Erwin. Even for character reasons, because I don't think Erwin's the kind of character who would do that. I don't think he would bend that sort of technology to that purpose, just because he's seen people like Zackly and he's seen people like the military police and how they've used that shit in the past. I think we've been setting up for the past couple of chapters that Erwin's not going to be that kind of guy moving forward. Pixis,
even though he was tempted.
Yeah, I don't know. Pixis seemed like he was on the fence for a long time, so he could stoop to that, but I don't think Erwin would.
Yeah, I feel like Pixis would probably use any weapon to his advantage, because he already, in a conversation with him and Erwin, pretty much said he used Zackly's ambition, even though he knew pretty deep down that he was a bad person. He used his power and where he was and his position of influence to get to where he needed to be. So, because of that, I would say that he may use the mind wipe power if it was presented to him.
Speaking of which, the only other note I had about Pixis was that Pixis outlined in this chapter the range of power that mind wipes have, because he had a quote in this chapter that said that they have the ability to alter humanity's memories as they see fit. Now, if that's not a clear and faraway distinction as being super overpowered, then I don't know what is.
Oh yeah.
Just to confirm that, throwing that out there.
There is not, like, this chapter, although there was some plot progression in terms of they're finally going to be at the location that Aaron and Historia actually are, so that's good. But after that, there's like really hardly any plot progression.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's the stuff that you missed early on, Zach.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah,
Sure.
the second chapter of the volume, so they're trying to slow burn it.
Something else we talked about early on was how a lot of people want to wait and see how it ends up being played out. And I think that quote from Pixis kind of puts it in perspective how it could be used, and that we've already seen the kind of things that it can be used for. Because a lot of people talk about how humanity's memories, they don't remember anything past 100 years ago. And also, we've already seen explicitly in this chapter that Historia was mind-wiped, confirmed mind-wiped. We've seen this in action. So we know how this can be used, which I think gives a little bit of credence to this shouldn't be a thing just because of the ways they've already started to use it.
Well, to be fair, they used it in episode 2 on Aaron.
Did they? What the hell happened in episode 2?
He kind of got a little bit of a stabby tetanus.
Yeah.
He got a forgetness.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Well, how else do you explain Grisha saying, this will make you forget,
Well, what you're hearing,
he doesn't remember it?
Yeah, what you're hearing from me is my continued resistance that it's being used. I still don't want it to be a thing that's being used. I still want to hold out hope that they're actually using, something rational. But, I mean, that's too much, obviously. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to. But
You guys,
I kind of have to.
both of you are just like, everything in this series, you're Jeb's lying. You're just complain.
But that's normal though. For anything that you care about and anything that you love, that you want to see get better, the only way that you can express it is to complain about the things you think should be better. That's totally healthy and it's totally fine. That's not exclusive to this at all, because that's everywhere you go.
I know, Jeb's law.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's fine. It's not detrimental, I don't think. Okay, so Historia. I want to go back to Historia a little bit. I'm still a little confused because for a while we were thinking there's no way she can be going along with this willingly. Maybe she's just playing along to try and find a way to help Aaron or to strike back against Rod or something. But this chapter really made it seem like she's actually potentially on board with this.
Yeah, and I mean, I talked about this a little before, but they made her character so dumb in a couple instances. Like, she at one point had a really good thought. Like, I wonder if Aaron is getting memories like I am. Alright, let me just not talk to him. Okay, cool. That's amazing. Thanks, Historia, for that brilliant nugget of information that you just completely left your noggin after 1 second.
You know what? That's an awesome point, because we've basically, over the last 10 chapters or so, had character development for her that's basically being just not addressed at all and almost thrown out the window because of what they're doing to her right now.
It seems as if Isayama thought that this was Krista and not Historia. It's like, this is supposed to be the evolved version, the personality-wise, of Krista. And it's not.
For somebody this important in the story, there's no way that he could just forget.
I know he didn't. I said it's as if.
Yeah, I just don't see how I don't know what he's playing at.
And if he goes and says, oh, well, she was actually double-crossing him, I mean, I'd be okay with it because I want her character to be redeemed from all of this nonsense. But at the same time, it's like, you tricked us by making it so obvious that she's actually involved and thinks the way she does, and then you just blatantly deny the facts or like the hints that are right there in front of us, like how she shows angry expressions when not even Rod's looking at her. Or like
Ben is sitting on the subreddit right now being super pissed off, almost as bad as I am, that Historia is not listening to anything Ymir has ever told her. I can.
That's unfortunate for sure.
I can feel Ben being angry right now.
To what you were saying, Scotty, I kind of agree, but you have to remember, she just found out about her big sister who loved her and who she loved, and then she found out that Aaron's dad brutally murdered her. So she's more than a little pissed at him right now, and though she might be thinking, hey, are you getting this stuff too? She might be wanting to give him the silent treatment for a bit.
So what I talked about earlier about nobody being pissed that Historia's childhood was taken away, Historia didn't even say anything about it. She was just more interested in seeing Frida again.
Did you not see her glaring at Aaron?
There was one line in particular I took away that she said was, I want to meet her again and thank her for ellipses. She actually said that she wanted to thank Frida for something.
And also
for everything she did, for taking care of her.
For
Zach.
erasing her mind?
Thank you so much for that. No, but Zach, to go back to your point, Historia didn't know that Aaron's father, Grisha, killed Frida before she had the thought about if Aaron also had the memories. So that point's null and void.
Oh, did she? Okay.
Yeah.
I could see that then.
But yeah.
I do agree with Zach earlier, though, just to transition, that I also think Rod is the biggest scumbag, asshole guy who's not at all telling the truth about anything ever. I don't think none of his flashbacks have been accurate. I don't think anything he said has been accurate. I don't trust a damn thing he's been saying. I think
the flashbacks may be accurate, but they certainly aren't complete.
I don't believe they're accurate, because one note I had about Rod coming out of this chapter was that he just inexplicably leaves out the point in the story where he got away from Grisha without saying how that happened.
Well,
like I said, it's accurate, but it's not complete.
I'm saying I don't believe that. I don't believe that's how that situation went down. I think he's pitching us the story he wants us to believe. I don't think it actually happened like that.
It may not be the right memory. He could have been the one to kill his own family, actually, if you think about it that way.
Well, he was the only guy.
Well, that would make Rod the shifter then.
No, he could have literally just killed him.
Yeah.
How do you buy, though, this was the only... His entire family was murdered. He was the only one who got away, and supposedly he's the only one who knows how it actually happened.
And that adds credence to the fact that he actually did murder them.
Basically,
either Grisha murdered them all or he did it. They're the only two people who know the truth, and Grisha's not here, so unfortunately we don't
murder his entire family, though?
If Grisha...
There could be a reason, but we just don't know.
If Grisha is dead, then that means Rod's word is basically law about how...
Except for the fact that Aaron now has every single itty-bitty memory of Grisha's, including any and all intimate times with Carla.
Well, apparently not every bit if he didn't remember this, right? We don't know if Aaron remembers this part.
He just got a crap load of crap to sift through.
I think the next couple of chapters are going to have Aaron actually talk, which should probably help us a little bit.
Maybe.
Yeah, because if you look at the way the panels are, this is all in Rod's, like an illustration of Rod's memory. And it doesn't say that Aaron is actually recalling the exact same thing. And even Historia, maybe Rod doesn't even realize that Aaron is recovering his memories. I believe that was mentioned.
Exactly.
Well, no, he knows, because he said in 61, I think, or was it 62? Last chapter, he said, now do you remember your father's sins? So he knows what Aaron saw.
Oh, that's right,
But what I'm saying is Aaron might have just unlocked all of the memories at once. He's got a crap load of crap that he's got to go through right now. He might just not have gotten to that point yet.
Do you like that phrase?
Where he's seen these memories.
Crap load of crap?
Crap load of crap. Shit load of shit.
You making that a slogan?
Sounds pretty intelligent.
I don't know.
Keep using.
You know what, Scotty?
What's that, buddy?
I don't know.
Yeah, go.
I didn't have anything to finish that statement.
So, next note I have a little bit to talk about is Kenny in this chapter.
I was about to get to.
Kenny,
okay.
Because right now I have Kenny sitting a little bit above the status that I put Zackly at. Because I don't think he's super important, but he's saying some interesting things for now.
He needs to take a shit, because that's about all he said.
No. I thought it was
his last expression says it all.
I did like that they made a point of having Kenny say in this chapter that he referred to Rod as the king.
But then also...
Multiple times he would refer to Rod without saying his name or saying Rice or anything. He just said king.
I was gonna say, but then the last little panel thing of Kenny shows like he's not really pleased with Rod. Maybe he has an indifferent opinion about him, about calling him king. So he might not double cross, but he might have a more controversial role in terms of not necessarily siding directly with Rod. He might have ulterior motives, his own ambitions and plans, so he could develop into a unique character in his own right, but we'll see.
Levi and Guren have been gearing up Kenny at the end of this chapter, so I feel like we're getting ready to see Kenny's departure from the story too before too.
Yes.
And that's totally fine by me because Kenny is also someone I don't care about at all.
Scott, like I've always said, I do not believe that Rod is in absolute power here because Kenny is the one that made him kill Historia's mother. And why would he do that if he was in charge?
Yeah, but he does call him king, and it's a subservient position for Kenny.
Kenny is a sarcastic asshole. I'm sure that when we get the anime, it'll be like, yes, my king.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a mockery. It doesn't sound like it's sincere. Not completely, to me at least.
But it's still being said as if he understands.
Acknowledges it.
Yeah. Not much more to go on in that.
I had something to say, but I forgot what it was.
That's good.
Let me back up.
Were you mind wiped?
I got it. I recovered from the mind wipe.
You can do that now. That's canon.
Oh, so you laugh when he says it, but not when I say it just a few seconds before? I see how it is.
That wasn't funny when you said it.
Exactly. What I was going to say was that...
What about Zackly?
It was an interesting...
I heard that too.
It was an interesting future little note they had about how Rod already knows that there are people coming to rescue Erwin and Historia. So I think in the next chapter we'll see that Rod and Kenny have already been planning for this encounter that we're about to have. Just a little note about what the next chapter will probably have.
Are you saying we're going to booby trap the church?
It's possible. What if those crystals we saw are actually like explosive? Or
No, shut up.
What
Shut
if
up.
they actually contain an Annie army?
Scotty,
And they
you
just
told me-
simultaneously melt and release.
Scotty, you just said to me that this was probably an impossible thing. What did we say at the beginning of this chapter? Nothing is impossible anymore.
Okay.
Wait. So does
let
that
me
mean you're admitting
preface.
that Monkey Trouble could actually be Connie then?
Yeah,
Oh,
totally possible.
Alright. So I want to get out of this. See you guys. No. But,
Hey, it's possible now.
okay, let me rephrase that then, Stiller, for you. Anything is possible, except for the crystals to be explosives.
Why?
That
Why
would be
you say
impossible.
that?
Crystallized nitroglycerin!
Alright, here we go. The mind wipe was your last straw that broke the camel's back. If those crystals are like IEDs, that will be my last straw. I won't give
Why?
Because, what do you mean? That's, like, impossible. That makes no sense.
If I'm being petty,
Have you never heard of, like,
Exploding crystals? No, I'm sorry, Zach, I haven't.
what's that rock they used in Breaking Bad?
you know
for
what, though,
crystals
Scotty?
that-
I'm being petty and stubborn about my position on this chapter. Are you gonna take a stance of being against the show now because of a crystal being used?
An exploding
First of all, this was supposed to be just a one-off joke. Because
Connie,
It
we've
was a-
already got 50-meter tall walls made of people.
did you
And now
call
you're
me
complaining-
Connie? You called me Connie.
Connie lover.
Oh,
And
that's
now,
I accept that title.
I mean, you're fine with 50-meter walls made of people, but as soon as a rock blows up, that's where you draw the line.
Okay, Zach, 50-meter tall walls built with people makes sense. That can happen. Ever hear of the Great Wall of China? But, then you enter into exploding rocks. I don't think they exist.
That
You know what, Scotty, I'm gonna back off because I want you on my side.
Oh, really? Well, I guess I'll accept, but...
Yeah, I need to let that go. The only other note I had about this chapter was that in the panel of the flashback, which I still hold to is probably a false image projected by Rod, I noticed that when when Grisha was confronting the Rice family, when he was pleading with them over something, I interpreted it as him wanting to make a decision about something that he needed from the Rices, whatever that might be, and that he didn't seem to portray through his body language that what he wanted or what he was trying to achieve was malevolent. I don't see that as potential, they're trying to paint Grisha as the bad guy here, and that face doesn't scream at me that Grisha's the holy evil that Rod's trying to play him as.
My question is why he used a scalpel to stab himself when he could just, bit his hand or something.
I don't know.
One
He's a doctor.
doesn't destroy
Actually,
a valuable tool,
Hey,
and
Mika actually probably nailed it on the head. He's a doctor. Scalpels are doctor tools.
Yeah.
yes, they are. And that explains why he has it on him, but why waste a perfectly good scalpel?
He didn't waste the scalpel. What do you mean?
So are you telling me that when he
Does that
comes out of his form, he's just gonna have a scalpel in his hand now?
Why not? That'd be a pretty
Doesn't
good
that bring
weapon.
to mind that he hasn't transformed very often, and thus he's not used to, biting himself or whatnot?
Well, Aaron certainly was after one try.
Well,
Aaron's the main
Grisha's
character.
different. Aaron's just wild. The wild child.
Aaron's the main character, though. He can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. It shows some reluctance on Grisha's part, like it wasn't his final, it wasn't something.
I don't want to bite my hand, so I'll just stab a scalpel all the way through it instead.
Well, he wasn't confident that he could bite himself, through.
No,
If it was his first time where he did it very rarely, it's not like he didn't have the determination to finish the job,
Not
So
that it was of any consequence anyway, because one scalpel that couldn't have really done any damage to him anyway, not really important, I don't think, at least.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think.
A couple of podcasts ago, we had Get in the Robot on as a guest, sort of like Mika is tonight, where we asked Robot about a lot of translation questions. As Mika is very prominent in the subreddit's, let's say, translation activity, we want to go ahead and do the same sort of process with Mika here, where we ask her some questions about her process, about how she does her monthly translations, the people she works with, how her timeline works, basically. So, Mika, if you could start off by just talking a little bit of how the process works, for the new chapter, since the subreddit is, what they would probably want to know is concerning how the process
Why do you
works.
take so long?
Yeah.
That's usually the question. Well, the last two chapters have been interesting because we've gotten the Japanese summaries first, and my friend Darlene Poppet on Tumblr, Emika, has been translating those, and they have been very, very reliable. Not completely accurate all the time, but I mean, she's working off of a Japanese summary herself, so without context, without images, so it's a challenge for her, but she does a great job. But before that, we used to get the Chinese raws first. They would have the schedule, as about when that they would release it, and I think all I do is just kind of keep in touch with the maintainer of the Shuhui group, and check in with them about when they would release it, and so on and so forth. But the past two chapters, they've released it while I was at work, so it's taken me a few hours more to actually get to it, and often I'm chasing kind of the Crunchyroll, which is fine because, we're not actually competing with them. We're just providing an extra service, as you could say. But in terms of the past two chapters, it's been kind of interesting because in the middle, in those few hours, I would get a ton of comments, a ton of asks on the Tumblr asking, the Chinese is out, are you there, and I can only respond, I'm actually doing my real life work right now. I can't really get to this hobby of mine until a few hours. Please be patient. But people have been understanding. I haven't gotten anything purely angry or antagonistic that I know.
I'd say that takes a lot of patience from you, because if it were me, I'd just respond to all of those at once with a obviously not.
Obviously not. But it's become such a routine for me that even if it's released in the middle of the night our time, I would just get up and and they would message me and be like, oh, it's up, and I would be like, okay. And when in those middle of the, I would leave my laptop open, and if the message actually wakes me up, and and then for some reason Anna and V, who do respectively the cleaning and the typesetting, do an amazing job at it. They are somehow on 24/7 and almost all the time. They're younger than me, so I don't know. I guess that might be it. But they're always enthusiastic about doing it. Every single chapter, I'm kind of like, oh, you guys, even when Crunchyroll started having the same timeline, I'm like, are you guys sure you still want to do it? And they've been like, oh, it's great practice for us, whatever they plan on doing, I guess, in the future. And they just, they are very appreciative and very, very fast, and especially in terms of Anna's cleaning. I don't know if you've seen the examples that Debbie sometimes gives at the afterward. And,
Actually, I was going to ask about the cleaning process, because I don't think a lot of people know how that works.
Yeah, because literally she's using the Chinese images, and we're not getting the the blanks, you know, and I'm assuming Crunchyroll gets the blanks without any dialogue, without any sound effects added. And she has the sound effects, and Chinese characters are very complicated. And, you know, somehow she manages to, you know, circumvent all the borders, circumvent all each stroke, and, you know, redraw. It's called redrawing. And, you know, even the tiny heads of the nobles in that chapter where they're interrogating Erwin, I was so impressed with that particular part. Although I can only imagine how much grumbling she goes through when it's a panel that's like that. When she sees it first, she's just like scrolling, and then suddenly, like, everything's fine. It's just everything's in a bubble, and then suddenly it's all over everybody's face. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine how frustrating that is. But somehow she does it perfectly, and V, of course, does the typesetting and chooses the greatest fonts. I always tell him he has the greatest fonts, and I don't know if you saw the most recent release with Aaron at the very end. He just did this hilarious, you know,
right.
And it just gets the emotion across, and yeah, and I really appreciate and respect what they do, and it's not just about the translation. It's, you know, that's a part of it, but
right.
It's like they do the more difficult part of the work, in my opinion.
Big
so
team process, right?
Yeah, all the power to them.
Right.
The translation is only, you know, it's like it's a mind thing, but for them, they literally have to. It's a design thing. It's, you know, it's a lot of different aspects.
So about the cleaning process, is the person who's doing the cleaning process, is that the one who is actually, I don't know, recreating or creating the actual text boxes, or is that the typesetter? Like, what's the distinction?
No, the cleaner is the one that kind of takes the original panels with the Chinese or Japanese characters, and basically erases, quote unquote, erases the text. Yeah, especially if they're overlaid over actual background, actual character, actual people. You know, the details can be pretty intensive, and that's a huge. You know, it doesn't happen often, thankfully, in Izayama's style. He doesn't. You know, he doesn't put like just sound effects everywhere. You know, it's not exactly at least in the recent chapters, it hasn't been the most action packed besides that Levi chapter, obviously. But she makes sure every line is connected, so to speak, and every, you know, and that the original text is not even legible anymore or even visible anymore. And the typesetter is the one that actually puts in the text in the, you know, after the cleaning, after the redrawing, and whether it's in the dialogue bubbles, which we don't recreate because we just use the original. They use the original ones, or the sound effects, you know, which you have kind of a liberty to place if it's all redrawn and you have the entire space to yourself.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of great details about that. Next, I wanted to talk about some of the stuff we talked about the other night, because, as you heard, I asked Robot a lot of questions about translation.
Right.
Some of the more difficult things that you come across, or, you know, what's the hardest, what's the easiest, what are some of the different distinctions, you know. After hearing what Robot said, do you have anything like to add to that, or do you want to comment on anything about, like, how difficult the translation process can be, or what some of the difficulties are?
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. I should note that the last chapter, the Chinese Raws, Shuhui, they didn't do their own at first. They actually just took the Taiwanese official translation from Tonal, and that was very, very difficult for me to, not very, very difficult, but more difficult for me to understand than their usual, because Shuhui is from mainland China, and I'm originally from mainland China myself, and for some reason the grammar and the word usage in the Taiwanese version was, even though it's both Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, it was almost convoluted, and I had a much harder time trying to make sense of what they were saying, but
Is it like a separate dialect then?
No, it's not a separate dialect. It's just the way they phrase things suddenly. Maybe it was just because I was accustomed to their usual translator instead of, you know, this, like certain things were more complicated. Certain things were just, you know, more difficult to comprehend. Like, especially when they got very elaborate with their monologues and whatnot. But I mean, in the end, it panned out fine. But I was a little bit thrown off by that because I didn't realize that there was such a huge difference between the two. But going forward, that was kind of a weird experience for me that I didn't expect. But what's hardest, I think I agree with Gen the robot, and that's what's hardest is actually the names of new characters, because especially in terms of Chinese, I'm translating from a translation, and it's all phonetic. So I almost have to guess. And you know how Izuyama is with his names. Some of them are actually very common, and some of them are just so out there. I think in
Berthold.
And Bert, like where Bert maybe, but not Berthold. But Gen the robot mentioned Billy, or Biore. I still don't know how to
Pure,
pronounce
I guess.
I was like, is it a skincare product?
What a
But
twist.
at first, when I saw the Chinese, I was like, oh, okay, it's a little common, but it sounds like Billy, and again, the robot thought the same thing. I was glad to hear that. And suddenly, when the Crunchyroll came out, it was like this convoluted, semi-French sounding, and I was so floored. I was like, why didn't he just keep it Billy? And it sounds like he looks like a Billy, doesn't he?
I'm sure Crunchyroll was just like, you know what? I'm not sure what to call this guy. I mean, and I know it sounds like Billy, but Billy's a stupid name for this series. Let's just call him Bure. Let's call him that.
Maybe it was just
But then again, they turned around and changed Caney to...
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was literally just about to say, that I was influenced partially because they just went with Kenny. I was like, okay, Kenny, I guess Billy doesn't sound too far-fetched after Kenny. And that's another story altogether, because again, that was one of the chapters where we didn't have the Japanese at first, and the Chinese of Kenny, and it was a title of the Chinese of his name, Kenny. If you say it in Mandarin, it's actually Kaini. And I was like, okay, I've never heard this before. What could it possibly be? And I actually thought Kenny as an option, but Kenny in Chinese actually has its own translation, and it's Kenny. And the Ishuhui team, they didn't use that. So I was like, okay, so it probably isn't Kenny, because they definitely would have used Ken. But I guess in the end, whether they were wrong or whether, I assumed incorrectly, we ended up with a South Park meme instead of the Kanye West meme. So at least we got the Kanye West meme. I was pretty amused by that.
I don't know how Kanye West has just infiltrated the hell out of the stuff.
It was a good infiltration, though. He's everywhere.
Got in there, and he was quick about it, man. Efficient work, very efficient work.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yo, dog, I'm gonna let you finish, but Rod Rice is the greatest leader of... Oh my god, they killed Kenny!
Yeah. What a mess. So it sounds like it's a huge mixture of different things. I was going to ask if you run into a lot of problems with just coming from different sources, whether it's just multiple sources or one source who's deciding to do one or two things differently, or just not do something at all, or if it's coming through so many different hops that you just can't translate it with any confident accuracy. But it sounds like it's all of those things, and like you also mentioned, the tonal differences too.
Right, there are tonal differences for sure, and that's something I've had to get used to, because I never translated manga before. What was the first chapter we did? Let me see. I think it was 56, and I just got thrown into it, and I was like, okay, let me try this. I know the characters, but afterwards I was reading it over. I was comparing, myself to my translation to others, and I was like, oh, I didn't really capture the personalities of the individuals very well, because I think despite what we've been talking about, Izuyama does give complexity to a lot of his characters and different styles of expression. And that was something I had to work on, because if I had to say about myself personally in real life, I probably sound the most like Erwin without the military jargon. Very, very just... I used very grand grammar and just very subdued in that way, but a little collected. And not every character sounds like that, especially not Levi and not Aaron, and I've had to kind of adjust myself and make sure I read over who's talking before I actually go into it, and
gotta muddy up some of the...
Especially Kenny. I mean, language. Kenny's just a riot. So
I noticed that you guys translated it as what do you mean? I'm just here to take a shit or something. Whereas, like, Crunchyroll, what did Crunchyroll say? I need to take a number 2 or something?
Yeah. I mean, they both work, right, for his character. And actually, I
not
purposely
really.
It got the point across.
Yeah. He actually talks about, I'm actually here to go to the bathroom and take a shit. But I was like, that just sounds too complex for him almost. I don't know, like compared to the Chinese, I was like, I'm just gonna shorten it because it's like more true to his character almost.
Yeah, I think that's much more true to his character. It sounds amazing. What the hell do you mean? I'm just here to take a shit, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with the Western accent we're assuming to have. I'm very interested in how the dub is gonna treat him.
For sure.
Here's Kenny.
Yep, exactly.
Actually, there was something I wanted to mention. I know that Kodansha's translation and Crunchyroll's translation have butted heads in the past with stuff like Colossus Titan versus Colossal Titan. Do you think that we could see a change back to Kaney or something similar for the Kodansha translation?
No, something tells me no, just because the katakana is actually Ken-ni. So I don't know why the Chinese team went to Kai. Like, I don't know where that came from. So that was what threw me off. But back again, that chapter, we didn't have the Japanese at all beforehand. So that was just something I had to do on the spot. So, and then we got Kanye West.
Kanye just doesn't go away.
Well, I don't foresee that changing. I mean, like I actually don't remember. I don't have the English manga actually, so I only have the Crunchyroll to reference. So I don't even remember. But
I've actually got all my volumes right behind me. Let's see. I've got 1 through 12. I've got my Mikasa Nendoroid.
Man. What a show off. Anyway.
You're just jealous I don't have an Annie yet, Nendoroid.
So, something else that we talked about the other night was the interest you had in some of the characters you haven't got to do any translation work for, like Bert Holt or...
Annie.
Yeah. Well,
I think Reiner actually is one of my favorites in terms of how he talks and what he says. So I'm kind of waiting and anticipating. I'm like, when is that chance going to come? I want to see how the Chinese team does it. Even though I've read, the past chapters and kind of a simplified way of how they
I was going to say, if you really wanted to, you could just go grab the old Chinese ROMs and translate it.
I have a Chinese manga, so it's not hard, but it's just interesting, to think now that we've gotten to this point in the story, how, what changes will take place.
Well, I mean, they might come back and instead of being Reiner and Berthold, they might be, I don't know, Jonathan and...
They're under because they have...
trying to think of something for Berthold.
You know what?
Jonathan and...
Sweaty hands, sweaty palms.
Jonathan and Jacob, I don't know. He might just pull a Berwick Marcel thing on him.
Oh yeah, that still baffles me a little bit. How you say I'm just swapped it.
I've heard two versions. I've heard that he forgot, and I've also heard that he just decided he liked the other name better.
I've heard 3 different names. I've heard Berwick, I've heard Barrick, and I've heard Marcel.
Berwick and Barrick, that's just like Berthold and all the other spellings of Berthold that are out there.
Marcellus Wallace.
No, yeah, but I'm very interested in just putting myself in their shoes, I think. Because if I go back and read it, it's not the same thing as if I'm seeing new content, Because here I'm kind of like, I have to immerse into, she's actually in this situation. Like, if Annie's breaking out of the crystal, what is her mood? What is her attitude? What words is she likely to express?
Yeah, that's what I was interested in. I was about to ask. When
Mm-hmm.
you get a chance to go into a character like that, does it help you understand the character more since you have to translate what they're saying?
Yeah, absolutely, I think. Although sometimes I'm nervous that my personal biases get into the character, and I feel like it's happened a couple of times.
This is what I've tried to argue about the old subreddit translation, about how their bias put that incorrect translation in for what Aaron was saying, like my father to me or whatever it was.
Oh, I remember that a little bit. No, but it's hard for me to relate to Kenny a little bit. I just don't, I think he's hilarious, but I just can't. I have to think myself three times before I write anything down for him, like how exactly he would word it. I probably press backspace more on him than anybody else.
What's it like working with the translation of a translation?
The Chinese has been pretty dependable, reliable, especially now that I have, the Darling Puppet in her Japanese to English. And also I always go back to Crunchyrolls to see if anything blatant is different. And I haven't discovered anything that's too
Canny.
yeah, that's like plot changing or anything.
Okay.
But I did notice in this chapter, in this most recent one, when when the 104th and Levi are talking and Hanji are talking, in the Chinese, and they actually refer to Hanji actually says day, like when she's talking about how they've only had a day to train, she actually says day instead of just Kenny, like she says tamen, which is plural in the Chinese, but apparently I think in the Crunchyroll it's just referring to Kenny himself. So, but again, like if you read,
I'm confused. Are you saying that in Chinese she was talking about his whole squad?
Yes, yeah, his whole squad in the Central Military Brigade Police in general. But in the Crunchyroll, she's referring to Kenny himself. But from what Kenny is saying, or from what Rod is saying in this chapter, it sounds like his whole troop, all of his underlings are with him, just not present in the panels. So. Or like they're just around in the area, maybe. So maybe both of them would work. But that was one thing I thought was kind of strange, that like the Chinese went with the plural, and not a huge difference, but you know.
Well, it would kind of imply
that there are
Kenny's new to the squad almost.
Does it sound like it? I don't know, but why would he be kind of like the leader in a way?
Yeah, I think he's been around for a while.
His experience.
And we know him. He's been killing them.
I was about to say he's supposedly, when we were introduced to Kenny, he was introduced as a fable or a legend.
Oh God, that is another thing I want to rant on. Throat slasher Kenny to Kenny the Ripper.
Mr. Jack the Ripper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I will actually say I like the Kenny the Ripper. I thought that was a good cultural reference. I didn't get. I hated, like, after I saw Kenny the Ripper, I was like, oh, I can't believe I went with throat slasher Kenny. Like,
I like that. I really like that. It's not just original, and it's totally not just a ripoff from history.
But you know, sometimes you have to have that in a way. To, like, to me, my translation sounded awkward. Like, to be perfectly honest. But
everyone needs their own unique name. There's a reason we have
throat slasher.
We have Charles Manson. We have what are some serial killer names? I don't know serial killers' names.
John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, John Wayne Gacy. And we got all them, and we got their nicknames, whatever they are. And we don't have John Wayne Gacy the Ripper. Charles Manson the Ripper, Jack the Ripper, Stiller 3 the Ripper, all that. Everyone has their own unique stuff. And I think that it's good to have a unique one for fictional characters as well.
True.
I don't mind that much.
Yeah. It's everybody has their own preference for sure. I just thought that when I saw that as the title, I was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? And I was like... Because mine was so literal. It literally says in Chinese that it's throat slasher. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll go with throat slasher.
Well, it almost sounds more badass than the Ripper.
The action's similar, though.
Well, even between the two names, they're both going after basically the same note.
Yeah, exactly. That he's relentless.
Yep.
It's just you have to make sure you get the persona and the identity correct more than anything else.
So, should we be calling him Sheriff Kenny then? Outlaw Kenny, the Sheriff
Kenny. Outlaw is actually a pretty good one, although he's working with the police now.
Within the next couple of chapters, we're going to be calling him Dead.
Dead Man Kenny.
So it's fine.
I hope he doesn't die. I like Kenny.
So, Mika, I want to give you the floor a little bit here. Is there anything that's been biting at you to talk about? You know?
Remember, you will be censored.
I will be censored. No, not exactly. I think I spoke my mind a little bit when I talked about, especially this chapter, how it was a little disappointing to see that theory come true regarding Mikasa and Levi, in terms of, you know, that they're OP for a reason, and it's not out of their own volition, because that was always something that was, I think, appealing about them to people who enjoy them.
Well, I think this is something you guys probably already argued about, but it seems to me that it's better to have a reason for being OP than just, hey, hi, I'm Mikasa. I'm Asian. I'm strong for no reason. Woohoo!
Look, I mean,
Hi, I'm Levi. I might be Asian. I'm also strong for no reason. Yay!
not that it's bad to have a reason, just like not something so thin. I think because it was so expected.
Well, we still don't know anything about it. I'm
True,
sure it'll go
yeah,
more
like
into
that was my argument to Stiller too. That there's still some history that we have to discover, and all the persecution, and discrimination. What exactly is that about?
And
like,
we already went some length on that, so I don't think we need to rehash that.
Oh,
yeah. What else?
damn you, Comcast.
I think just that I hope there. I'm curious about where Isayama will go with the extension of the whole series, because if he extends it by as much as 3 to 4 volumes, that's a lot of plot, and that's a lot of almost filler material that he has to put in.
Is it filler if he's completely changing the plot, though? Because it's more like he's just changing the ending to add more plot, really.
It could be. We don't know. It might be.
That's true. But I don't know. It's interesting for 4 volumes though. For something like this that has a kind of a clear beginning and end for me, and that's something I'm very curious about. So I wonder if by volume 20 we'll kind of get to see, like, do we get to witness a glimpse of how he intended to end it, and then, oh no, there's more.
Oh, we know how he intended to end it. He intended to end it like the Mist, where everyone dies.
Yeah, where everybody dies. So what is
sounded
there
amazing.
this resurrection power that we don't know about? Is that the ultimate power?
Oh no! All right,
Don't even joke.
that's my piece now. Unless Connie
you
has.
heard it here first. No.
You know what, though? I don't have any more straws to break, so you might as well. Like I said originally, the floodgates are open. Because
I didn't even hear what she said, and I'm not sure if I should be glad about that.
you probably don't want to hear it. It's probably fine.
Go hear it, and you'll be like, oh.
You'll hear it later. You'll hear it during the regular podcast when you listen to it back. But
I usually don't listen to these things.
how dare you?
He doesn't like the sound of his own voice.
Man.
Well, it's not like I can ever focus on it.
So,
I still need to watch last month's.
I was thinking Mikasa would be a big thing. Like, you might have a thing about Mikasa that you wanted to talk about that people don't notice.
Mikasa, to me, I've always respected her a lot just because besides the fact that she started out a lot more one-dimensional than she is now. And I think I noticed that in her character about her self-control now. I noticed that, she's not in this desperation mode at the moment, even though, in maybe 20 chapters ago, it would have been easy for her to slip into that. Like, she's almost kind of collected herself. She understands that where her position is, and, with this new discovery, who knows? And then with her potentially meeting Kenny next chapter, who knows? But for now, I still feel like she's developed a lot over, ever since chapter 50. And to me, that's something that I look forward to her continuing. That's growth.
A good point. If this were the Mikasa from the Forest of Giant Trees arc, she'd have just gone beast mode and destroyed the entire city to get Eren and Historia back.
And you know
the
what?
instant they were kidnapped.
Just Eren.
It probably would have worked. We probably could have saved a lot of time if we just let her do it.
Yeah, but half the squad probably would have died.
Yeah.
I mean, last time she broke Levi's ankle, which magically healed in a couple days.
Yeah, no, there's a question, I guess, that's kind of interesting. How come if there's some kind of power, are they super healers? How come her ribs healed in 2 days or whatever it was, and Levi's ankle took ages? Or was Levi faking it? But if he didn't know who he was, then he probably wasn't faking it.
Well, Levi was probably just at that point in time where he wasn't super focused on healing as much as he was sort of leading this new direction for his squad to go into.
Yeah. But we'll see, I guess. For Mikasa, I just, there's nothing anybody can say that can detract her from being one of my favorite characters.
Absolutely.
It's just like how you are with Annie, too.
Right.
But, so obviously, this bias.
Stiller borders more on the line of obsession, whereas you're just a fan.
That's your interpretation of it, good sir.
Most people's interpretation.
I'm very, very awed by that, though. I'm very impressed by that, so to speak. Especially because he probably doesn't even realize it, but to us from the outside,
yeah, I can understand that.
It's very, very apparent.
That perspective of it I could get, where it seems like I'm obsessed or I seem like I'm a little too attached. I get that. but it's just because I get caught up in writing, you know. I write, when I actually do write arguments for the subreddit, I write big, long things, and sort of like how Mika talked about when she does translation, she really gets into her characters and helps her understand these things. I think having discussions on the subreddit and having people talk about theories and character development, that sort of thing, really helps people understand characters too. And there is no one I have argued more about than Annie.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Well, also
I want you, Stiller, to write a book about Annie, and then have someone translate it into Chinese or into Japanese, and then send it to Isayama, and then just see what he does.
If I had any confidence that would make him bring her back faster, I would do that.
What if?
Absolutely.
How heartbreaking would it be if he like responded? He's like, dude, Annie was like a kitchen character. She wasn't supposed to be a
it's
character.
funny you mention that, because there was a thread today, or yesterday, or something like that, where this stuff about Isayama, you know, forgetting things about some of his characters was talked about on the subreddit. And one of the top comments was about, oh, well, he must have forgot about Annie because she's been gone for forever. And I was just like...
I don't think I saw that thread.
It's the Brutus interview thread.
At first, I was like, I hate that idea, as you would expect. But then I was like, podcasts ago, where we talked about Andy's potential fate, was a lot of our predictions said that she was going to die at the end of the story. And I said, that's okay if she has a good death and she gets closure for that.
So not getting Iron Man'd?
Yes, that specifically. And what I talked about earlier in this chapter, near the beginning of the podcast, was I said, if they turn her character into a Mikasa type of character where she gets character entitlements because of some bloodline or because of some shifter innate ability or some sort of nonsense that doesn't go along with her character development, I would be okay with throwing her out the window. You know what? If Annie turns into a shit character, I can't stand by her anymore. And
you heard it here first, everyone.
Yeah. The end to this
sign the petition to ruin Annie's character now.
The end of this anecdote is that in past podcasts I've said, if they're going to do something bad with her character at the end of the story, whether it be a bad death or not good enough closure, I would rather her just stay sealed in the crystal and just leave me with what I have now, because I could probably write my own ending to her arc that would be better than doing something like turning her into Mikasa. That's pretty much the stance I'm gonna have to take until she comes back.
Stiller, when she comes back, would you rather that she joined the good guys, or you know, supposedly good guys, or you know, stayed the way she was? And
well, that's hard to answer, because I am inclined to give a cop-out answer and say I want her to do whatever she wants to do.
She's a character on a page. She doesn't have thoughts or feelings.
I mean, I do.
Only Isayama's thoughts and feelings.
Dear book, I will drop you. If you land on your front cover, you will go with Erwin. If you land on your back cover, you will travel with Ryder and Bertolt.
You're not wrong, because ideally...
Choose your path.
Ideally, I do want her to do whatever she wants to do. So, I mean, if I had to pick, her story is eventually going to come to some sort of conclusion of her story about her father.
Right.
So I would want her...
End of story.
So I would want her to come out of the crystal and meet with either her home village or with Reiner and Berthold, just to further progress what her story is going to continue to be when she comes back. I think coming out of her crystal, her best and ideal situation would be to be with the people she was working with before, or to just go home and deal with the issues that she has, let's say.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, that would be ideal for me. But if I had to pick, like, military-wise, I almost don't want her to join any of them. Because her joining this...
I'll make my own walls with crystals and hookers.
Her joining Levi's new squad would be
doesn't
bizarre.
Complete sense, actually. Especially considering what she did to Levi's squad. Don't forget that little tidbit.
Man, that is just like a bomb waiting to go off. Yeah, okay. So ideally don't want that to happen. I'd rather she just go home.
I just realized the podcast after Annie finally comes back is going to be nothing but Stiller griping about this one little detail that Isayama screwed up on and how it's totally ruined Annie's character.
Please remind me back for that one.
So I
almost want to live stream that one.
I assumed it was going to be the opposite of this one. Because the opposite of this one would be, this was the best chapter ever. You know.
What if it was mind wipes? What if she was mind wiped?
That
Annie was mind wiped, and she came out of the crystal like a newborn.
It depends. It depends on where they take that mind wipe. You know what I mean? Because initially I want to say, okay, well, I'll not stand by her character if she gets mind wiped. But it depends on what she does after she's mind wiped. Is she being controlled by somebody, or is she just being mind wiped so that she could be, killed or manipulated or whatever? Because if she's mind wiped and then told that she has to stand for some new stance that she's never stood for before, I would be pissed. But if it's just, she gets mind wiped and all of a sudden she's going back to what she was doing before, so it would really be context specific. I wouldn't like it in general, but I feel like that's an inevitability of her coming back, is she's somehow, her and Reiner and Berthold and Ymir and all those guys are somehow going to get involved with mind wipes and all that nonsense. So I'm bracing myself. I don't want it to happen. I want to argue against it happening, but I really can't.
Not anymore.
Right.
Which is not a good thing. It's a bad thing.
Well, let's see. We're being patient, right? We're waiting.
I mean, if you want to call it patience, you can, but I don't really think I'm being patient with it.
Stiller's thinking it as torture.
Yeah.
Just enduring torture.
It practically is, because we started this podcast with me saying every chapter from here on out is going to suck for me, because the floodgates have been opened to the point now where I value the story a lot less. The progression is going to be much more difficult for me to get through, just because I feel the quality has dropped quite a bit.
The subreddit's been going wild with stuff like, this volume is the volume that Stiller snapped, or
You should see the questions. You should see the questions that we have for this chapter.
Oh, I want to so bad now.
Well,
they're pretty interesting.
So we're gonna go ahead and move into the questions for this chapter now, since we've cleared everything, I think, out of this chapter that we need to without inducing some loud yelling. So the first question we have for this chapter is, who will save Historia?
Eren,
you think?
Mm-hmm. We saw him go and all break his arms by hyperextending them at the end of last chapter. Or at the end of this chapter.
I don't guess we've ever seen Rod, do anything physical, have we?
He's a fat ass.
I mean,
I guess
Rod's got a belly.
I was gonna say he'd have a problem with Kenny being there, but I guess Rod's not gonna be much of a threat.
Kenny left. Kenny went to take a number 2.
Well, I mean, he might be back in time. I don't know. If he hears loud noises that sound like fighting.
Well, no. He was leaving. Or he was here to take a number 2, and then he left to leave because he was kicked out.
Well, wasn't he left to leave because he was supposed to tell them to leave too?
What?
Right.
But he was there to tell Rod and his people to get out too.
No, Kenny wasn't supposed to be there anymore. At all.
So this question,
Rod said GTFO, basically.
This question was submitted by Ben Chandler from the subreddit. I would be okay with it being Ymir, actually. Having Ymir show up I would enjoy that development. I think that
as long as she brought Reiner and Berthold.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I'm okay either way with that. That's fine. Totally.
I really doubt that would happen. It could, but
I'm not gonna lie. That could be why there's another 2 chapters.
A what?
It could be what?
That kind of development could be why there's still another 2 chapters, because you would think that it would end next chapter.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I kind of assumed
doubtful, but
because of Eren and all the revelations that he's gotten and how he's going to react after he maybe breaks out, maybe not breaks out. Who knows? Interesting, nonetheless.
Mika, you say that, or you assume that it's going to end in 2 chapters. Volumes are cliffhangers. I was looking through my school library the other day. We only have up to volume 10, and it is ridiculous how much of a cliffhanger that volume is.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But the arc is technically supposed to end at the end of this volume. So even if it is a cliffhanger, it almost felt like an ending when the coup d'état succeeded, but
Yeah, so
obviously.
who's to say we're not in the next arc then?
Oh, true.
Just as a side note, isn't it kind of interesting that the whole political uprising arc and that whole, rebellious, let's talk about overthrowing the king and all that just kind of got thrown out the window once we started talking about mind wipes, like it's not important anymore.
What do you
Maybe
mean?
on purpose.
So what was that, Scotty?
Distract the populace with the mind wipe theory confirmed. So now everyone's focused on that, and they're like, oh, that other government arc is in the past. Overthrow.
Well, I mean, the arc ended. They completed the coup. What's to be confused about here?
Well, I was just thinking that it's kind of crap that we spent so much time talking about this political uprising to just throw it out the window and start superpowers.
And also
with the Zackly's torture.
Like, it's not even, like, it's everything that happened in the political arc is, like, totally unimportant.
Yeah, pretty much. And there was talk before about there might be an uprising, the populace is split on the new change, and it's like, they could have delved deeper into that, but I feel like Isayama wanted to just end it.
Well, considering mind wipes exist now, why...
Always have exist.
Why do we care that the political arc happened?
Exactly. Yeah.
Isn't that... Yeah, whatever. I'll get off it. Next
It's
question.
barely over, so it might still be continuing.
Next question. Alright.
Was Grisha justified in what he did? His wife just got killed, people are getting slaughtered and by the wall and need help. I think there's a spell.
Typo in somewhere in there.
Yeah. If the Rice family are unwilling to help,
the fragments.
that's a cliffhanger there.
So let's just take the first part of that question. Was Grisha justified in what he did?
I mean, I feel like that's still...
Do we feel like it's probably one of those things where, like, we don't know anything about
that falls under the usual answer, which is we need more information to justify or make a conclusive statement regarding that. And
Not enough information for a meaningful response.
That's pretty good, actually.
That's a reference to Isaac Asimov, you uncultured swine.
Oh, wow. Zach, this is the chapter where I am supposed to eat crow, so this will be that podcast. Next question.
I sure hope it was Isaac Asimov, or I'm going to look like a massive idiot.
I hope you do, because I can't argue against you. Do you think Levi's crucial moment of power happened during a particular event in the No Regrets story, or something else altogether?
We would have seen it.
I would say something else altogether, because I'm not even sure the No Regrets story is canon.
It's canon, yes.
Is it canon?
It's canon.
Stiller, you're correct in saying what you said. It's debatable still. I think if it's getting an OVA, there's a better chance that it is canon, because, I mean, they have to link it with the actual anime in some form, but I agree with you in saying that it was somewhere else, even though there was that ending moment that it might have been, but I don't think it was.
If Levi isn't going to die anytime soon, I assume that we're going to see what this moment was somewhere down the line.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think it happened before the No Regrets story.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Because he's already pretty friggin' OP when it starts.
It'll probably be a flashback of some kind.
Yeah. But we would have seen if it was in No Regrets, and I'm sure that when Isayama gave the author of No Regrets permission to do this, he said, hey, this is what you can and can't do. Don't go into something like why Levi's so powerful. Because this is why he's so powerful, and I want to do that on my own.
Yeah. No Regrets was very specifically timed in terms of where the timeline is in Levi's life, so you could tell that there was a huge chunk that was left out.
Yeah.
Even from when they announced it, I was like, oh yeah, they're not going to talk about his real past. This is just like a very small figment of it.
Some of the recent over-the-top events from the political arc: Armin getting molested, brains being splattered by hand cannons, Flegel teabagging a dude, and Zackly creating a one-man human centipede. How do you think the anime production team will be handling these source sites? Also, if you were on the anime production team, how would you react?
I was actually thinking about this one on my own. I think for the eat shit and die scene, they'll probably just change it to something like... Shit, what was the example I had in mind? I think they're not going to show it in any way, shape, or form. I think they're going to censor it, change it to something more worldwide acceptable.
I think so, too.
I guess it would depend on what the production team's motivation was, because if they wanted to do a 100% accurate representation, of course, then you would include it and then maybe bump up the rating as necessary of the show. But I feel like they're probably going to want to keep it the same rating that they had, which I think before was ridiculously low, like a PG or even G rating. I remember I made a reference to it in, I think, a previous cast, because I was like so flabbergasted that they could have such a low rating, and clearly you can't have those scenes if you're going to keep that rating. So I think
someone hasn't watched episode Mikasa Family Issues, whatever episode that was.
Yeah, but even that's different than Zackly's torture, and
yeah,
I think you see that. But yeah, so I think it all depends on their motives, and I personally believe that they're going to lean more towards changing the scene, like Zach said.
So, next question. How do I think the most recent developments are going to affect Annie later down the line from this chapter? It's similar to the question we talked about earlier about what if Annie gets mind wiped. And I'm not sure I have anything to add to that. I think if it happens, I will be very upset. I don't know. Maybe a different way to say it would be for me to say, if she turned into Mikasa, I would throw her out from a standpoint of being outraged at her character. Whereas if she were mind wiped, I would just be like sad, you know. I would have to leave on a sad note instead of angry at what they did to her character note. You know what I mean? It's a slight difference, but generally that's the same realm of an answer, I think.
Yeah.
So, next question. Back in the chapter 60, or was it 61? I'll agree with that. Back in the chapter 60, A Cast on Titan, Scotty mentioned an OVA about the mysterious character Grisha. Now that the last few chapters have removed a good chunk of the mystery, who would be the next mysterious character to have an OVA about that teases the audience about his or her unknown background? So, when, you know where that's coming from, Scotty?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would say as of now, there are a couple. I guess Frida, maybe an OVA about her and her life would be interesting, since we know nothing about her. Maybe Rod, but that's grasping at straws. We already got kind of the Ripper. I'm completely blank on his
Kenny,
yeah. We already got a couple tidbits of information regarding his past. Now he was like in the slums with Levi for a while. So I guess Frida would be a safe answer for that.
It's hard to give an answer because the answer has to be one that's like not going to reveal anything that the story is going to talk about. So it's kind of hard to pick a character. I would like to see, since we can't use Grisha, I would like to see another Ymir OVA. Or I would like to see a Berthold OVA. I still think that's a good idea. Just characters that we don't know too much about, who we can't...
Well, the thing is, Ymir and Berthold, we're going to find out about what's up with them, I'm sure.
Well, the OVA would consist of things not dealing with what we're going to learn about them. Because these characters are mysteries, we want an OVA to talk about some of the more frivolous aspects of their lives.
Therefore making the whole
Mikasa would be
OVA thing pointless.
Mikasa would be a great OVA. Because they
Arvin as well, actually.
They could flesh out her character in an OVA that they seem to refuse to do during the manga.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it then.
Yep. Next one.
All right.
I'd say I'd like a Hanji OVA, just because we actually don't know anything about her.
Hanji OVA would be good. What kind of cover illustration is the one for Volume 15 supposed to be? Aaron is hardly in it. Chapters 59 to 62. It is going to be coupled with the first Levi OVA.
Have you guys all seen the
Which one
15
is
cover?
Is that the one with Aaron's face?
Yes. The 15th cover is just Aaron's shocked face with a bloody mouth on a white background.
Pretty plain Jane, pretty generic, but I think I know what he's going for just because we still have that quote to hang on to about the chapters from here on out being answer-based and revolving around Aaron learning things. So I could kind of understand it if this volume is supposed to be geared around Aaron learning things, as opposed to introducing new concepts.
Yeah. I mean...
The other question is, do we like it, though? is the good thing.
I think they
Interface
could use
is
something in the
good.
background.
Oh, literally the cover.
Yeah, just like cover.
Yeah, I have no qualms with it. I think it's alright.
You haven't seen it, have you?
No, I haven't. It was just described, so. Zach.
I think it's okay. I kind of agree with Zach, but I can kind of understand what they're going for. So, yeah.
I can understand what they're going for. It still seems plain, though.
Yeah.
It's a huge
Because we
deviation.
go from, like, the whole new squad Levi prepping for battle on 14, or 13, and then we've got Hanji, Erwin, and Levi in a bar for 14, and then just Aaron's dumbfounded face with a white background for 15.
Yeah.
Mika, what were you gonna say?
Aaron is just...
I was saying that it's a huge deviation from what he usually does for the covers, actually. He
Yeah.
usually doesn't do completely white backgrounds. I don't think there has been one. And usually not a giant face. Oh, he did completely white backgrounds, but not for his choice for like the special slip covers.
Is that the special one, or is that the standard cover?
That was a special one, the Aaron one from last volume. That replaced the bar that you could put over the bar scene.
Oh, what was that?
It was just a white background. But he usually doesn't do white backgrounds, to my recollection.
But this Aaron one we're seeing is the standard background for the next
Oh
one.
yeah, this one is a standard
Okay.
background.
Okay.
You're not wrong.
I think... Let me check here. I think, one of the volumes... Yeah, volume 11 is the one that has, Reiner's Titan, or the Armored Titan versus the Rogue Titan on the cover. It's a pretty white background,
Yeah.
but there's enough
There's still so much more detail to it.
Yeah.
And
I don't know why Reiner's Titan is all white on it. I don't get it. It's weird.
Okay, next question. Now that we know Levi and not only has no clue... grammar. Now that we know Levi not only has no clue about his last name, but knows less than Mikasa about the Ackerman deal, on top of screwing up with the executing proper judgment multiple times now, and was also responsible for the death/endangerment of his teammates, can we all agree that Levi is just a tool? Well, this is something we've talked about in the past with Levi's character. The Levi Aberrant was a pretty, I don't know, I want to call it a little bit of a highlight, but I still kind of feel the same way about Levi now as I did then. He's on, as far as my pedestals go, Mikasa is on the bottom pedestal, Levi is just above her. So I'm also really not a fan of Levi at all. I don't know.
Mika, I'm interested to know how you feel about these revelations, given that whole essay you wrote about how Levi knows what's up with the Ackerman stuff.
I mean, I don't think I can argue that he does know at this point as well. Definitely not as well as last chapter. But you actually read that essay? Wow.
Yeah. I think I referenced it in the last podcast I was in.
But I don't know. It's in the last one you could still kind of argue that he was playing, and some people are still saying that he could be feigning, but I don't know. He sounded pretty honest
legitimate
there. And he's not very good at, just like pretending, masquerading about facts that he's fully aware of.
I just think his character is prone to that kind of discussion just because he doesn't emote enough.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Because it wasn't too long ago we were having discussions about whether Levi was actually working against the Survey Corps.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think people were taking a little out of context because they were misinterpreting some panels. But I think his character is still still an enigma for the most part. Like I still don't understand how he could possibly know so much about Kenny and not know his last name and not know, that he himself could be that. And I don't know, it just, and like how when he first met Mikasa, when he first, heard about her last name, that it didn't trigger anything. How is that possible? Oh gosh, don't tell me, mind wipes.
Mm-hmm. It would be like, this is like such nonsense to have to talk about it like that. Because Levi and Mikasa, their characters would both benefit so ungodly much from just having them emote a little bit more. We don't need to give them superpowers. We don't need to have mind wipes be an option. We just need to have them express a little bit more. That's all it takes. Just
where's the fun in that?
Both developing in a positive direction.
Yeah,
and then I was a little bit thrown off first of all, by Levi's last name ages ago, and I was like, what?
I think we all were.
Yeah.
Even though it always hinted at it, with the similarities and whatnot, but it was just still, I didn't think he would go for it.
You know who else's last name we don't know?
Ew.
Ymir.
Yeah.
Ymir. It's like a Mario thing. Yeah,
Oh.
somebody got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't get it.
But she's actually, I just talked about this with a friend of mine, I think either today or yesterday, that, and many people have brought it up, that she could be one too. Whatever that means. It's true. There's a reason that people don't have last names.
She's Levi's great-great-grandmother
There we go.
We don't
before she was tightened.
Like, we don't have to play.
She's the original leader of their
Ackerman.
clan or whatever.
We don't have to play 6 degrees of Mikasa. If we can just have these characters who don't emote just a little bit more. We don't have to use cliches like bloodlines and mindwipes if people just talk a little more.
Yeah.
God, it would do so much.
Yeah, right now we can only sit tight and find out what exactly is Kenny's role in all this, and then I think we'll be a little
Taking
more...
shits and shooting people.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much trouble we could save if we could just have people talk a little bit more about themselves? And so, okay, I'm getting off it. Let's
less drama.
Next question. Serious question is the... Oh, no, that's not one. No, I left that one in intentionally. There was a question here that said, is there a limit to the amount of questions that we want you guys to submit for the podcast? And the answer to that is no. We want you to submit every question, all the questions, as many questions as you could possibly submit, because we will filter them out and answer the good ones.
Oh!
Yeah.
However, more questions you ask, the longer it takes, which means the less sleep I get, the lower my grades go. So I blame you guys if I don't graduate high school, okay?
So, if I have a request for people submitting questions, I want abstract questions. Like last month, we got a question from Raidlets on the subreddit who asked about inserting ourselves and what characters we would take and whatever, and we ranted on that for like a good 20 minutes, I think. Abstract questions are great. You should ask more abstract questions, If you could give a suplex to somebody, that's my go-to example. If you could suplex somebody in the show, who would it be? I love that question.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
What does suplex mean?
It's a wrestling move.
Oh my.
Oh, well,
your lack of wrestling knowledge.
I don't do that stuff, okay?
See?
I think we've gone over this.
That's exactly why you should submit that question so you can hear him stumble over it. Perfect.
Shut up. I'm tired and you're all meanies.
There we go.
Okay, so next question. So if the Ackermans have superhuman abilities, you think they might have a resistance to the mind wipes, like how the nobles are supposedly...
That's what I thought they were going to further in this chapter. I even mentioned this before, like, they literally cut to the panel talking about the Ackermans right after the revelation that some lineages do not, or are resistant to the mind.
This is only going to contribute to the bloodline thing being overpowered. Because what this is saying is, the Ackermans, they have this bloodline technique that makes them everything proof.
Yeah.
That's, I can understand you might want to do something like that now that you have to do something like this because you introduced this in the first place, which was your first mistake. But now that you have to do this, I can understand it being a plot requirement,
If they would have went with just the mind wipe resistance with the Ackerman line, and then not the superhuman abilities point, I would have been like, that's fine. I would have no problems with that. But then when you give them so many, like, heaps upon heaps of resistances and power-ups and all of these things, it's like, alright, now it's just like, if you're an Ackerman, you win. It's like, I don't like it.
Didn't we say we weren't going to argue about this again?
It's not an argument.
Ackerman to win.
Yeah, honestly. It's just a statement, Zach, not an argument.
Okay, so, next question. While everyone keeps saying that Kenny never told Levi about his last name to protect Levi, I think Kenny might have just forgot to talk to Levi about it. Like how Levi forgot to tell everyone that Historia was actually royalty. with this possible trait similarity, what other father-like son similarities would the two possibly share?
Oh no.
So this is basically saying Kenny and Levi have more of a relationship that we haven't talked about yet, just because Kenny hasn't really addressed some of this stuff to Levi.
I mean, it has been established they do have a past together.
Right.
How extensive that past is and how close they got is up for debate, especially since Levi didn't even know his last name. So how close they have gotten, I don't know. It's debatable. But if they were really close, then maybe they share similarities. Maybe Levi was like the son to Kenny that he never had, but then there was a falling out, and maybe we'll learn more about that.
Does Kitty seem like the kind of character who would have that?
He does.
I'm not sure about the whole Levi not knowing his last name thing anymore. Levi was talking about, or Levi realized that Kenny was an Ackerman, and then he specifically asked Mikasa if she'd felt a surge of power moment. I mean, why would he assume that he did just because they share a last name? So, 2's a coincidence, 3 is a pattern. If he had it, he knows Kenny had it, and he knows they're both Ackermans, and Mikasa's an Ackerman. Maybe she had it too, so maybe he does actually know.
What was that point in this chapter?
Oh, I see where your argument is. Okay.
Wasn't there a moment where Levi actually asked Mikasa if he thinks that she thinks she's related to Kenny?
Yeah. He specifically says if she thinks, but not like to him, not to Levi, just to Kenny.
Isn't that kind of weird?
Supposed to.
Because all three of these guys potentially related. If one of them is asking about the relationship possibly being there, weird. That implies someone's related or someone's not related.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very bizarre wording.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I blame you, Mika.
Okay, next question. What was your reaction to Zackly's torture device? First, I was in disbelief, then I immediately started to laugh, afterwards trying to grasp how Isayama, let alone anyone, could come up with such a thing, let alone publish it. Also, do you think this is just Isayama testing the waters to see what he can get away with, how far he could go, or what?
My reaction to seeing the whole torture device is, where do I get one? No, I think Isayama's gotten a little bit of stress from working on this, so his innermost thoughts are kind of leaking out here.
I don't think he's testing the waters, though. I think he's just doing whatever he wants.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem like he's being restricted.
Isayama don't give a shit.
Yeah, it's like Honey Badger. Next question. What would Grisha's Titan nickname be? I was always a fan of calling the Santa Claus Titan from episode 5. I was always a fan of calling him Grizzly Adams. I was sad no one ever gave a Titan the name Grizzly Adams.
We could call Grisha's Titan the Daddy Beater.
The Daddy Beater. Oh my god.
I'm gonna go with Grizzly Adams. That's my answer.
I have no answer. I'm bad.
Didn't someone call him the Poseidon Titan or something?
That's not bad. I like that. I think it could be okay.
Yeah.
Or no, was it Thor?
Yeah, that's too much.
There
He looks more like...
there was some ancient god thing that they named him, and I can't quite remember what it was.
Well, we already have Yumiya.
But I remember I liked it.
Go full Norse here.
Oh, we already are full Norse.
Not really. Okay, next question. For Stiller, is there any way the mindwipes and Ackerman shenanigans can be handled that you would be satisfied with? Man. Is there a way that this would be okay? Is there a way to make this not terrible? I don't know if I have the answer to that yet. Like, it might take me some time to figure out if I can figure out a way to make that not offensive to me. Man, if there's a way to make the okay, so if the mind wipes have been introduced now and they become totally inefficient and they become like irrelevant and not worth using, and we can discard them, I'm on board with that.
So literally no.
Pretty much the answer, unless you get rid of it.
If they no longer exist, then I will like them. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to answer it.
If the mind wipe ability itself gets mind wiped, then there could be a chance.
Yeah, if it spontaneously combusts.
Well, then you've got a grandfather paradox, Scott.
If it spontaneously combusts, I'm okay with that. So for the Ackerman bloodline thing, kind of the same deal, where if it's not overused and it's not sort of like we talked about being everything proof and being a band-aid, it's possible as long as it stays toned down and as long as it isn't like stupid reliable and consistently OP. But like we said, that's probably not likely. So right now, probably nothing would make these things acceptable to me. But if you give it like 5 to 10 chapters, that might change.
Going back to that mind wipe thing, what if you've seen that it's possible to reverse the process? What if the whole next arc is just about reversing it? Would you like?
What I'm afraid with...
I don't think so, because I think it's not the current generation that's been mind wiped. It's...
Oh, you mean it's
the current generation's grandparents that were mind wiped, and then they taught the children the altered history.
I'm afraid of like a Naruto-esque end of an arc where a bunch of people died and we go all of a sudden, oh, let's just use the reverse of this and bring everyone back. I would hate hell out of that.
But what I'm referring to, Zach, is even Historia. The fact that she dreamed about, or was that Aaron that dreamed about it? That encounter with Frida chapters ago.
Well, yes, they got those memories back, but what I'm saying is everyone whose minds were altered is probably dead, and everyone here is their grandchildren who were taught the altered history.
I don't see a way for them to progress this without at some point there being a moment where someone goes around just restoring people's memories, just like the mind wipe was never...
Yeah.
Like, what was the point of the mind wipe if you're going to go around and just make it null? You know?
Well, like I was saying, 100 years ago is the benchmark we have for altered history. So that is the point in time where the Rices wiped all of humanity's minds. Well, unless you're counting the Acker Supermens, people don't live that long, especially in medieval ages. So right now, all we've got are the descendants of those people. Therefore, these people that we have now don't have the original memories to be restored. All they have is what they were taught. The victor writes history.
Right.
So it's like if our grandparents were alive in World War II and JFK came along and wiped their minds to say Nazi Germany won. And no one had any reason to believe different. And they taught us that.
That analogy just makes me hate the concept even more.
Damn it.
Because the analogy I was going to paint was using that 100 years as a benchmark. You say, alright, well, this happened 100 years ago. What I'm thinking is, if you start introducing this where you're going to give people their memories back, you might as well get to the end of the show and say, oh, well, everyone who lost their memories just gets their memories back, because...
Well, my point is, they can't get their memories back because they never had the memories to
I don't mean specifically those people from 100 years ago. I mean everyone who's in the future going to lose their memories because of this thing.
No. If the mind wipe is the coordinate, I don't think anyone else is going to be losing anything.
It's not the coordinate. I don't think. Specifically in this chapter, it even says at one point that Grisha wanted the power that Frida had, and then it says Grisha held the power like a separate power. It specifically
the power of the Titans.
Yeah, and then it said that Frida had a different power, so they're not the same.
No, the power of the Titans just means Titan shifting. We've seen the same thing with Yumiya.
Does it, though?
It says...
He said she stole the power of the Titans from Reiner Berthold's people. That meant she ate Marcel and became a shifter.
I don't know. I think we need more information on that one. Next question, I guess. How is the Ackerman bloodline related to the Rice bloodline? Hopefully not at all.
Yeah, I think they've done a pretty good job of making sure they're very distinct, and probably a feud.
Can we? I'd like to get rid of the word bloodline, but I'm sure that's probably not possible.
Family.
I just did it, still.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate it. That's not what I meant, though.
I deleted it out of the question for those
literal interpretation of that.
For sure.
Keep going. Next question, I guess, since that's basically it. What do you think Grisha is saying to the Rice family on the page before he transforms?
Please, protect the wall, save my
my family. Something like that.
I mean,
use your power, fix Walmaria, save Shiganshina.
I'm okay with that. Something along those lines.
Again, it's one of those things to be determined.
To be continued on the next podcast.
Yeah. Dragon Ball Z. Alright.
Do you think the Noble's assertion that they're immune to memory alteration squares with Frida's manipulation of Historia's memories?
Yes, because they're just saying we get to pick and choose who gets mind wiped.
But yeah, because basically they could tell Frida, what to do, basically.
Yeah, it's like, Frida, this guy needs to forget about his debt to me.
Yeah.
Or my debt to him. This guy needs to forget that, his parents went outside the walls and found humanity out there. And this guy needs to forget that his name is Joe and think that he's actually a woman. But we get to remember all this, okay? And he's like, okay, magic!
Yeah, magic, exactly. We've been talking about how Rod's he's basically being portrayed as a master manipulator, at least from our perspective. So with Rod being the wordsmith that he is, it seems pretty likely that he could get Frida to do what he wanted.
Well, she is his daughter.
And we know how well he treats his daughters.
Potentially kill.
Well, I mean, Historia's not really his daughter. She's just a bastard child.
Oh, but if you listen to him talk about it, he'll say, "Oh, Historia, I've always cared so much about you."
Well, yeah, that's because he's trying to manipulate her. I'm sure behind the scenes to Kenny's like, man, I can't believe I have to stand up with this bitch. God.
Yeah, it's probably true. Next question. The original purpose of the coup was to put Historia on the throne. Based on Historia's current development and rationale, do you think this goal will ever happen now?
I think they're heading in a different direction.
Yeah?
I feel as though there is a potential for that to happen, because, as we've established, Zackly's probably going to have a sudden fall from grace.
This is what we talked about earlier, though.
Yeah.
Most of the political arc stuff gets thrown out because of this chapter.
But that still leaves the point that someone has to lead, and Zackly's not going to be the long-term leader.
But
so
leading doesn't matter right now, considering mind wipes are going to happen.
Well,
you see the problem here?
When you say mind wipes are going to happen, it's not an imminent thing. Like,
it apparently is. The next,
no.
In the
it
chapter,
doesn't say that, though.
In the chapter, they specifically said in this chapter, it doesn't matter what you guys do within the next few days, because
that's what the villains say.
This leads into my argument as well. Aaron, the mind wipe is part of the coordinate. There's a reason that the Rices didn't just wipe Erwin's mind the instant they knew he was planning a rebellion. They didn't have it. Aaron had it, and that's why.
We're thinking that Rod would succeed. That's why they.
Exactly, Stiller.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, the villains always make very large claims that don't always come true. So just because the villain said we're gonna mind wipe them all, when you claim it to be fact, it's nothing at all close to fact.
When I'm saying that, I mean to prioritize your issues here. Finding the leader is not nearly as important as making sure the mind wipe doesn't happen.
For sure, but I'm not talking about the very next. Yeah, all I'm saying is I'm not talking about the next chapter. They're gonna find a leader. I'm talking long term. Eventually, will she go into power, and they will need a new leader because Zackly's not there for long. But I don't think that given her predicament, they wouldn't take her from. All right, you've been held captive. Why? Either a willing captive or a hostile captive, whichever, and now we're going to immediately put you on the throne. Like, that's probably not going to happen. But eventually.
I think 50 chapters from now, I think it's possible.
50 chapters.
But the bottom line is she's not going to eat Aaron, she's not going to gain that power, and that's that for now.
That would be cool, though.
I know, I was like, maybe not.
He doesn't contribute much to the story anyways, might as well just give it to her.
Anything could happen. Absolutely anything could happen at this point. The floodgates are open, and they will stay open.
I just thought, though, I think, Stiller, this is a way that you would be completely happy, is if someone gets the memory wipe ability, and then dies without being eaten, so therefore the power is lost forever. You would like that? The mind wipe, power whoever has it dies and isn't eaten, so therefore the power is lost forever.
We don't know that's how it works.
I know, I'm just saying. Zach, Jesus.
That would... You know what? That's not bad. I would be interested to see where that takes place in the story as to whether or not there have...
Plot twist, Annie's the one that gets it, and then she dies.
Well, I mean, if it happens and there are people who have been victims to the mind wipe, I'm curious to see how many there are, what sorts of effects have happened because of it. But if there's... Basically,
Ooh, Stiller the scientist here.
Scotty, you're feeding into my theory here, which is, if there's a way to get rid of it, get rid of it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help you out.
That's basically still the same thing, though. So, it's, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, sure. If you can get rid of it, I would be happy with that. Next question, and it is a long one.
It seems like the same thing we covered.
Is the mind wipe ability separate than the Korean? We talked about that.
Pretty sure it is.
Pretty sure it ain't.
In her dream, there was the same flash. Okay, yeah. That we've answered all of that.
I haven't heard a single counter argument from you, Scotty.
About what? It says it, that they're two separate in the chapter. It literally says it.
I don't remember
Go read it again.
I can show you. They literally reference them.
I can show you the world.
It says that Grisha held the power of the Titans. Then it says...
Yes, that means
No, listen.
shifting.
Shut your damn mouth. Listen. And then it says, but he came here in order to steal the power held by the Rice family, specifically a different power. So there you go.
Because the power of the Titans is shifting.
Yeah, and no. They reference it as a different type power, like a grandiose power. That
As
was
in the
larger.
coordinate?
Exactly. And then he came as a coordinate to get the power held by the Rice family.
No, wait, what? No. The
held-
power of the Titans has specifically been used in the past to refer to the ability to Titan shift.
I'm gonna find the specific panel because it's different. It's outlaid in a way.
I'll find the other one too, if it's in my published.
I think
it's
for right
not.
now, you guys should agree to disagree on this.
I'm
Alright.
reading in Chinese, and it sounds like it's the shifting for Grisha.
Yeah, because Ymir specifically said that her crime was stealing the power of the Titans from Reiner Bertholdt's people, and that's why they would kill her. So,
I think what Scotty's getting at is that power of the Titans is... That phrasing is vague. That could
it
mean
means
a lot of
shifting.
things.
Unless you want to say Ymir has the coordinate, it's shifting.
I think I can stand by Scotty on this one and say what I did about the mind wipe, even though that'll eventually be wrong, is that it doesn't explicitly say shifting. It says power of the Titans.
Well, I don't think they've ever said Titan shifting in the series.
Well, I mean, unless he actually gives it a name, then we can't safely assume that it's shifting.
I think Rod is a little bit too casual if he was talking about something that was other than just the shifting.
I do think that's what I mean, though, is that it's so vague, it could be anything. A Titan having a giant fist that could crush it.
Even with Titan powers, it's hard to make it out of Titan territory like this alive. That's one thing she says. It's when, it's in the scene where Aaron's trying to bite what remains of his forearm after he wakes up in the forest with Reiner Bertholdt and Ymir.
The fact that it's vague is what causes the difficulty with it.
I don't know that much about our Titan powers either. Unlike you two, I don't know how these kinds of things work.
The
only thing I'm seeing is it's being called Titan power, the power of the Titans, blah blah blah.
This just goes back to our previous discussion, where I don't know if you were here for that, Zach, but we talked about if the two powers were combined, and then I just stated...
Planet, he's a hero.
What?
Nobody knows Captain Planet?
I don't.
Art.
Yes, thank you.
I was just saying that that would be a really overpowered tactic, or whatever you want to call it. If they could control the Titans and mind wipe people, it's like, okay, then you win.
You know what, though? That would
Well, yeah, there's
be
a
a good
reason
setup
they
at the end of
said
the
she's
story.
practically invincible, just saying.
Let's put that at the end of the story. Let's have the invincible Ackermans against the invincible Super Titans.
Against the
Aaron versus Mikasa,
Exactly.
final battle.
Mortal Kombat. Let's do it. Hit the theme.
Mortal Kombat!
I would be okay with that. Titan
fucked
would
up
be
my
totally
throat.
stupid and devoid of any seriousness and quality, but I would watch it.
Yeah.
So that concludes the questions that we had for this podcast, and unless there's any other pressing issues that we need to discuss, we can go ahead and put a cap on this one. So, with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and call this a wrap on this, A Cast on Titan, episode whatever, chapter 63.
There we go, Stiller. Very good.
I shouldn't even be trying to count what episode this is.
You know, we didn't talk about the similarities between Grisha's Titan and Monkey Trouble.
Is that what you
Similarities exist. The end.
I know.
There are a
That's pretty
lot.
much all. I mean, yeah. You can go into detail, but the abridged versions, there are similarities.
Many.
But it doesn't account for a whole lot right now because,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you could say that Frida Titan looks like Annie.
it's
So,
true. It's
there you
true.
go.
Yeah.
So it's a possibility, but maybe not. Can't really give a definitive, stance on that, it seems like. So,
Alright.
Mika, thank you for being on this podcast. You were awesome as a guest.
Yep,
Thanks
totally.
for having me, guys.
And in the description on the YouTube video, there will be a link to Mika's Tumblr, as long as she's okay with having people probably ask more questions.
No, of course.
Okay.
And please invite me back for the chapter, for the cast after Annie comes back. I love to listen on live.
I'm gonna say you're welcome anytime.
That's true. Yeah, okay, so, that's it, guys. We'll go ahead. We'll see you guys next month on the next edition of A Cast on Titan.
Yep, see ya.
See you guys later.
Bye.